All right, all right, all right. We're going to learn today. So, today I am uh, thinking about distractions and how freeing yourself from distractions um, will lead you to peace. So, I'm not talking about distractions in the way that you would think. I'm thinking about an unconventional way of distractions. So, things like your 9 to 5, the job and title that you have, you being a mother, you being a father, you being a wife, you being a husband, sister, sibling, brother, um, any other title that you would use to describe yourself. Because when I say, who are you? I don't want to hear you say you're a mother. I don't want to hear you say you're a teacher, you're you're something in corporate. That is not who you are. That is what you do. That is what you have. That is, you know, what you may arrive as. But those things are distractions. Funny enough, right? You wouldn't think that that is a distraction. You would think social media is a distraction. Um, Escapism, like meaning substances and all these other things, are distractions, which is true. Don't get me wrong, that is true. But the reason why I say those things are distractions is because they are they are standing in the way between you finding yourself and you finding the peace that you're looking for. We're all looking for peace. We don't know that we're looking for peace, but when you have things like anxiety, depression, um, you know, just even overwhelm or feeling like you're unsatisfied or not satisfied with your life, that is all your soul, your being trying to find peace, trying to be at ease. And the reason you're not at ease is because you haven't found yourself. You haven't found, who are you without your title at work? Who are you without your title at home, as a mother, a sibling, daughter, brother, uh what, son? Who are you without, an accolade? Oh, you're an author, you're a this, you're a that, right? There's so many different things that we attribute to ourselves. That's not really part of the core of who you are. So how do you go about freeing yourself from the shackles of titles and status and classism? Well, you need to figure out who you are, first of all, right? And how do you do that? Well, this is how I did it, right? You first start by, I started with my name, right? If you're African, your name means a lot. And I've asked many people, what does your name mean? And sometimes I get an answer and sometimes I don't. And the people who I get an answer from, I've tend to find are more at peace with themselves than those who do not know what their name means. The reason being is that knowing your name is self-discovery. It's knowing your history. So my name is Ayanda Lindelwa Zona Zonke Zintombi zakwaThabizolo. Yes. A whole sentence. Which basically means the more that was waited for by all the women of my lineage. But the shorter version of my name is Lindelwa, which basically means waited for. And my sister, I have an older sister, and every day she'd be like, once my mom told her that she's pregnant, every day she was like, when's the baby coming? When's the baby coming? Because she just really wanted, to meet this new person and to have a sibling and to have someone to play with, right? So I was waited for. So, first thing that you do to figure out who you are is your history. What were your parents' thoughts before having you? Why did they give you this name? I went and investigated every single name that I have, because I have three names. So I went and asked each person, why did you give me this name? What was your thinking behind this name? And it gave me this outside version of who people thought I would become, right? So that gives me my history. And then I had to look at the present. Okay, what are the things that I'm interested in? What are the things that feed my soul? You know, you know, is it writing? Is it, teaching? Is it, um, you know, is it drawing and artistry? What is it that feeds my soul that is outside of what I do as a profession? Because what you do as a profession does not determine who you are. You may be in an industry that has nothing to do with your interests. But when you go inside and think about yourself as a child, what were you doing as a child? What did you enjoy? What were you always drawn towards? So, for example, for me, as a child, I would literally scribble pages on pages. Before I knew how to write words, I would scribble because at heart, I was always meant to be a writer. And then, when I track my timeline, when I was a bit older and I had younger cousins, I would teach them. So they would maybe struggle with the subject. And I was, you know, I don't know how I was equipped to have this because, it's part of who I am clearly. But I would teach them. I'd even do like test sheets and, I'd teach them the foundations of the subject. And then I have like test papers to say, okay, let's see how well you remember the things that I taught you. And even in that, it was clear that my soul is a teaching spirit. And then another thing is I was always introspective. I was always looking at why. Like my mom used to say, I was an annoying kid who'd ask why like five different times on the same thing and just want to understand. And it got frustrating for her. I actually see it in my nephew now. He asks why. It's like it's literally my karma because he asks me why every time. But anyways, I was always trying to seek and try to understand what is this world, what is happening. So I'd always be like why. So I was introspective. And then another thing is I was always seeking this deep understanding, not just of the world, but of myself. So I'd also ask myself this why. So those are the things that I can go and say, this is who I am, because this is who I was as a child, without anyone telling me, don't be a teacher, don't do this, don't do that, right? So, for an example, when I was in high school, after like when I was trying to figure out what I was going to do for the rest of my life, which is such a hard and big thing to think that a child must be able to understand and articulate what they want to do. But yeah, when I was trying to figure out what I was wanting to do for my life, basically, or to study as well, um, my mom told me that she told both of my sister and I that you can't go into teaching because when they were growing up they only had choices of being a nurse or being a teacher, and she said she's not paying for teaching degree because she wants us to have more um, access to other things, basically to do anything else. So already that was cancelled out. She said actually it wasn't just teaching. She said she's not paying for any Bachelor of Arts degree, right? So that cancelled out the writing that I knew growing up. That cancelled out, um, teaching. That cancelled out psychology, which is what I was doing even as a child, but I didn't know that I was doing that. So fast forward, I've studied BCom information systems and somehow was able to get psychology in it. I had to speak to a dean. It wasn't even something that was catered for because when you do a BCom subject, you're meant to be doing two majors in BCom, Bachelor of Commerce. So I was like, I want to do psychology. There's something that was gravitating me towards it. And luckily enough, I was able to fit it into my schedule and do it, you know, even though it wasn't part of the degree, and do it as a major. So that was like the beginning of me coming back to myself because That was my true interest. Yes, I was capable of doing, information systems. I even started with engineering, so I was capable in doing that too. But it just there was something that just didn't sit well with me. It didn't sit like it was where I was supposed to be. So now fast forward, I'm working in corporate, and imagine if I was only focused on the corporate industry and what I'm doing as, trying to strive for being a manager, trying to strive for being a partner, trying to strive for being a director and whatever, right? That is a distraction from what? The psychology, the teaching, the the writing that I'm meant to be doing as a person, the true drive that I have, right? Luckily for me, I always had psychology around me. I was always writing as well. So even in my personal time, I'm a poet. So I'm always writing on my phone. My notes app is full. Oh, my notes app has secrets. And notes app has secrets because that's where I write and I bear my soul. Um, so that's where all the creativity comes from me. And then the teaching, funny enough, after I finished my degree, I had a gap um, in my. Okay, let me explain this correctly. So after I finished my degree, I couldn't find a job. I was applying everywhere. I came from a reputable university, what we call our Ivy Leagues here in South Africa. I went to Wits University. And, you know, coming from that kind of university, you shouldn't have an issue, getting a job, especially back then. This was in 2019, pre-COVID. So I think post-COVID, I mean, things are different. People are struggling to get jobs and things like that. But also in my degree, it was still very new. So people would get jobs in that industry because I'm in the tech industry. So, anyways, I'm struggling to get a job, and I don't know what's happening, right? Because I should be getting a job. And then in that time, my mom was like, okay, since you're basically having a gap year, how about I pay for you to go to China? Or, well, at that time, we didn't know which Asian country, but she was like, go to Asia, go teach. Your sister did it. It can be your gap year that you wanted after, because I wanted a gap year after high school, but obviously didn't get that because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I really was just, unsure of what I wanted to do. So, anyways, I go to China, I teach, right? So now you can see throughout my life, psychology is coming in, throughout my life, teaching is coming in, writing is coming in, right? So then I end up teaching for 3 years, and then I only then do I go back to corporate. And, you know, while I'm in corporate, I'm having the worst of anxiety. I'm so stressed. Um, I'm constantly chasing something that I'm just feeling insatiable in terms of my drive towards having, a title, being a manager, being this, being that, right? And I didn't know that in my soul was hungry for me to come home to myself. So I say that all to say that when someone were to ask me now, who are you? I tell you that I'm a writer, I'm a teacher, and I'm a psychologist. Reason being is because I have been those things throughout my whole life. And those things are, you know, such a part of me that everything I do, everything I say, how I am as a person, how I arrive in this world are those three things. So when people say that they are a mother, they are a sister, they are, you know, that is a distraction because, yes, those things are true, but that is just the surface level of who you are. That's not the deeper part of who you are. The deeper part of who you are is the self discovery. It's what are you what is your mission here on this earth? what are you going to leave behind? If you're going to leave behind the fact that you're a mother, that is not enough, in the sense that you are not leaving yourself behind. You are leaving the fact that you mothered a child behind. That means it's that child's legacy that's being left behind, but not you. So when you are saying that you've lived a full life, what does that look like? What does a full life look like? Is it you, striving to be the top dog at work, or is it you striving to leave, to literally empty the tank of who you're meant to be and your mission here? That is what you need to be seeking, instead of all these accolades. And that's why I mean that these things are distractions, because they are distracting you from figuring out the deeper level. They distracting you. They're here at the surface, and this is what you're paying attention to. But this here is what you need to be feeding and what you need to be cultivating. So this is who you truly are. And that on the outside is what you present as on the outside, what people see at first glance. So you end up spending so much time on what people see at first glance, which is basically goes back to how you're being perceived, goes back to what are people going to say if I leave my corporate job to go pursue a writing, teaching, psychology, um, you know, background. So what? So what? You do it, and then what? You living your best life. Right now, I'm living my best life. Me going into hospital and being sick and having to recover has been the biggest blessing. And that's something people would never say, right? Because you having been in the I was in the hospital 3 times in 6 months, because my purpose here is so loud, and it's saying you're not living in purpose, you're not living in purpose. There's so many things that are trying to tell you that you're not living in purpose. It is your anxiety, it is your depression, maybe you can't keep a job, maybe you're struggling with your health issues. Whatever it is, there is something in your life that is constantly telling you you're not living in purpose, you're not living in purpose. But you need to listen at you need to, firstly you need to assess what's happening, and then from there you need to listen at what thing is telling you, you know or guiding you that you're not in the right place. So then I said that you have to figure out what your past is. Then I said you must figure out what your present is by going to the past as a child to figure out who are you in the present. And then you need to go to the future and say, who do you want to become? So, what do you want to leave here? What is your purpose? How do you begin to find your purpose? You first figure out who you are. Now, now that I've figured out who I am, I now can live in purpose, because I know I've written a book. It's coming out in a couple of weeks actually. Can't wait. Um, I've written a children's book, so I'm officially an author. Well, I will be officially an author once it's out to the world. But in my books, I'm an author. That's another thing of who I am, I guess. Rather, that's the presentation part. I'm a writer first and foremost. Anyways, you need to look at in the future, who do you want to become? I know that I want to be an author. I want to be a psychologist. I want to be a teacher. Those are the three things I want to do. And everything I do from here on out needs to align with those three things, right? It needs to be so. Even at work, in my corporate space, I was a psychologist. I made sure that no matter what other corporate things I'm doing, I am still living my purpose, right? So I put initiatives at work that were in a way of psychology. I put initiatives at work in terms of teaching people and changing the culture at work. I was helping in terms of anything in terms of like writing as well, because I would help, write reports and proposals and things like that. So it's not to say that your profession, in your profession, you cannot still do and live your purpose. I was always living in purpose. I just didn't know how to cultivate it in a healthy way, right? Because I was so riddled with anxiety and depression and, my past and living in pain and suffering, that I couldn't really give it my all in the truest way that I wanted to. So it's not to say that when you figure out, the pay, the anxiety and the depression that you're experiencing, it's not to say that when you figure out that this is an indication that you're not in purpose, that now you must drop everything and go and be an artist. No, it's to say, how can I live in purpose with the life I'm living right now? Meaning that, can I bring my artistry to work? Or can I use work as a way of funding my artistry? It could be those two things. So it's not to say that now you you have to only focus on one thing. You can do both at the same time. You can do all of it, you know. So basically, the short part of all of this is, to minimize the distractions, you need to figure out who you are. What are your hobbies? What are the things you love? Like, make a list of all the things that you enjoy, the things that you enjoyed as a child, the things that you enjoy now. Those things will help you figure out, who is this person outside of your title, outside of your relationships with people, outside of classism, capitalism, etc. And then from there, figure out how you can incorporate those things on a day-to-day basis, whether it's at work, whether it's in your personal life. um, it means having to take time for yourself. Limit those distractions of, yes, social media needs to be limited too, because I think social media is best used when you know who you are, because then you can either be using it as a tool to share things with the world, or you can use it as a tool to educate yourself for the things that you enjoy. But when you are using it as an escape, that does not benefit you, because then you are just adding to the list of distractions that you already use on a day to day basis. Yeah. So I think that covers today's um, video journal. Basically, free yourself of these distractions, and that will lead you to a place of peace. That is the real, I guess, message here. Look at your past, look at your present, and look at your future, and figure out what you need to do between now and then to get you to a place of peace. Because once you figure out who you are and you figure out who your purpose is, your soul is at peace. I'm saying this from experience. I was riddled with anxiety. Now, my spirit is calm because I know exactly what I need to be doing. I'm studying, I'm writing, I'm I'm publishing, I'm teaching, I'm doing all the things that I was meant to do, you know, in in conjunction with being in my profession, So learn from me, take what you need, and I hope that this video gave you something that you needed. So, all the best.